Welcome to the American Chronicles podcast. I'm Vlad Davidiak. George T. Farrell is chairman of BlakPAC, a political action committee primarily working to assist black conservatives qualify for office nationwide. The group also works to elect black, Latino, and Asian conservatives to office, opening and expanding the GOP to new voters and candidates. During the 2016 cycle, those efforts proved to be decisive, as BlakPAC engineered the largest single minority get-out-the-vote effort in Republican history, helping to give President Trump the margin of victory he needed to win the key battleground states of Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina on Election Day. Farrell joined the show to discuss the foundation and origins of BlakPAC, some of the many accomplishments of the group, lessons learned from the ground and grassroots, and the upcoming challenges in 2017 and 2018. Coming up next on the American Chronicles. We're joined now by George T. Farrell. He's the chairman of BlakPAC, a political action committee primarily working to assist black conservatives nationwide qualify for office. The group also works to elect black, Latino, and Asian conservatives to office, opening and expanding the GOP to new voters and candidates. During the 2016 election, those efforts proved to be decisive, as BlakPAC engineered the largest single minority get-out-the-vote effort in Republican Party history, helping to give President Trump the margin of victory he needed to win the key battleground states of Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina on Election Day, helping Republicans to reclaim the White House. George Farrell, welcome to the American Chronicles.
Thank you for having me, Vlad. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate being on your show. You've got tons of listeners, and they're going to learn a lot today. Really appreciate you having me.
I know you're traveling today. You're engaged in various parts of the country. You're always on the move. But I appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk with us. George, a lot of people are really not aware of the efforts of BlakPAC. And BlakPAC is spelled BlakPAC. You can find them online at blakpac.com, and you can also follow them on Twitter at RealBlakPAC. You have to specify real because there is a fake BlakPAC. The leftists tried to horn in on some of that action, trying to disrupt the election. But thankfully, your group was able to circumvent that.
Well, at first I was angry, but it actually it validated our work that we were needed. When someone copies you, it's a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. George, talk a little bit about the history of BlakPAC. A lot of people are really not aware, not only of the organization itself, but the role that it has played in trying to get the big tent expanded into the black community and address a lot of these people's concerns from a standpoint of engagement and outreach. Walk us through how BlakPAC started and what it has accomplished.
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., and I'd always been involved in politics. I interned for Claiborne Pell, the founder of the Pell Grant, when I was in college. So I'd always been involved in politics. I was in politics at a time when there was very little security, and the guards at Congress would be sleeping, and you just go in right into the congressman's office, but that has all changed. So I always had a very deep affinity for politics. I moved to Florida after selling a successful mortgage business. I sold it right before the S&L crisis and came to Florida to retire, but I got right back involved in politics, helping the second campaign of Jeb Bush. I held several fundraisers for him, ran one of his campaign offices in Pinellas County, Florida, and stayed involved after Governor Bush, who actually was the first Republican governor in about 20 years in Florida. So we made a turnaround there, and Florida's been Republican ever since. It's a red state. So we made a big difference there, and I did that not as BlakPAC, but on a personal basis. And as I started seeing more and more of what was going on in the country, it appeared to me that I need to duplicate myself and start and form this organization formally. So on January 9th of 2015, we were awarded a super PAC from the Federal Elections Commission, which then meant that we could raise funds and help other candidates and not just do one candidate at a time, but also do more chapters and open different offices. So right now we're in the process of opening a chapter in Texas, in Austin, with an attorney by the name of Mike Lee. We're opening a chapter in Louisiana with former Senator Elbert Guillory. And we're working on a chapter in Georgia and other places. So the start of BlakPAC came way before we actually started BlakPAC. It was a passion that I had, and with the laws the way they are, we can now do more as a political action committee than just one person at a time. So I'd like to have a lot of your members and your listeners go to our website and join with BlakPAC or send me an email and find out how you can get involved and how you get involved in your state on the grassroots level, because that's what it takes.
Now, I know that BlakPAC was not only created out of passion, but created out of necessity. In a way, you've seen from the ground level, from the grassroots level, the challenges presented to electing black conservatives, black Republicans across the nation. But you've had some significant successes. Talk a little bit about the most recent election in the election cycle 2016, the challenges you faced and what you were able to get across the line.
Well, the challenge is, if you take this number, and I recently wrote this on LinkedIn, 0.005% is the number of black Republicans in Congress. That's Tim Scott, Mia Love, and Will Hurd. That's 3 out of 535,000. So it's really not enough blacks in Congress to actually make black Republicans in Congress to make a difference. So that's one disturbing figure, that we're 0.005% of all of the members of Congress out of 535. So there's a passion there. We have to put more black conservatives in Congress, because black conservatives are true conservatives. They're not rhinos. So that's our primary mission right now. For 2016, what we saw is that we had to get the message out to the black community ourselves, because Mr. Trump wasn't saying what do we have to lose. We turned it around and said, what do you have to gain? So we started talking about jobs, that Mr. Trump was going to bring jobs. He's a job creator. We did that in Florida. We did it in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, Louisiana, and Ohio. We created our own door hanger, which is on our site. If you go to LinkedIn again and you search our articles, you'll see it. You'll see our own door hangers that we created and we hung in minority communities across the country. We also had our own message, which is, you've got to get involved, because if you don't get involved, you get Democrats who don't care about you. I mean, if you look at every low-income area in America is controlled by Democrats. And I know from growing up black, that nobody really grows up wants to be poor. So to get the message out there, we have a pro-life message, that we care about the sanctity of life. We care about education. We think parents should actually be engaged in their children's education, whether it's homeschool, whether it's charter school, or whether it's public school. And as a man with children, I've used all three types of schooling for my children. And different children of mine, they just love different. Some things took and some things didn't. We've homeschooled, we charter schooled, and we've used public education. So I think it's up to the parents. But the parents also have to have, and one thing I say in all my talks, there's a site called Khan Academy. You have to monitor that your children's learning at grade level. If you go to khanacademy.org, you can get your child a free account and monitor what he knows. So parents have to be involved. You can't just leave it to public school system, because they'll let your child flounder, and they don't care about your child's success because they've got other issues in public education. But if you're a concerned parent, if you're an engaged parent, your child will get an education in a public school system. So I don't want to say that public education is not good. You just have to be a concerned parent. So in addition to what I'm saying about education, in addition to asking for votes, we're also educating the voter as to what it means to be a Republican voter. Your taxes are going to be lower. Your neighborhood's going to be safer. Your education system's going to prosper if you vote Republican. If you vote Democratic, you're going to get a ghetto. And so we've got to educate people what the difference is, and that's one of the things we do. And that's one of the things we're able to do with Donald Trump, by educating people what the difference is. And that's why we turned out more black voters. I think we had in Florida, 173 black Republican voters. And Donald Trump won Florida by 112,000 votes. So we were a major difference in Florida and in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, and Ohio.
We're speaking with George T. Farrell of BlakPAC. He's the chairman of the group. He has been instrumental. He and his group have been instrumental in reaching out and engaging to minority communities across America and affecting positive change and electoral victory. You can find his website at blakpac.com, and that again, that's spelled BLAKPAC, blakpac.com. And on Twitter, you can follow them at RealBlakPAC. George, now that President Trump has been inaugurated, he's now well into his administration. BlakPAC is transitioning from helping to elect President Trump into electing other candidates across America. You've gained some perspective on achieving these goals, and so you've been able to translate the things you've learned on the street in the real world into addressing this from a new perspective, and maybe using some of those tools in new and diverse ways. One of the things that has come up recently is BlakPAC's efforts to recruit Sheriff Clark in Wisconsin to run as a Senate candidate. But you've also been instrumental in helping other candidates from diverse backgrounds as well. Talk a little bit about the candidates that you're engaged with and the efforts that you're undertaking right now.
Well, two of the victories we had, I want to go back to this, is we had a Latino woman in Florida, Jackie Toledo, who won a state office in Hillsborough County, Florida. And Hillsborough County is a blue county, and we elected her as a Republican in a blue county. We also work with Derek Wilburn, who has American Conservatives of Color out in Colorado. And we worked with the Darrell Glenn campaign. We lost by 4 points, but that was the closest we came to putting another black in Congress. So we know we can do it. Some of the techniques we've learned in terms of the Draft Sheriff Clark campaign. We started the Draft Sheriff Clark campaign on December 26th or 27th of last year. And the goal was to actually build momentum for Sheriff Clark. It became so successful that 2 or 3 other PACs have hopped in to support his effort to win. And it's going to be a really tough race because his opponent is an open lesbian who promotes sanctuary cities. So there's a fine line. There's a line there that we can push Wisconsin back into being a conservative state with Sheriff Clark. So we're working very hard on that. We started the Sheriff Clark campaign. It's going very, very well. And what we've learned is that what we need to do to put people in Congress is we've got to draft really good candidates. Like, I'm going to give some names out there that I shouldn't, but I would love to draft Alan West and get him back into Congress. He now lives in Texas. I would love to put a draft campaign behind Jennifer Farrell, who is a former lieutenant governor of Florida. So we're looking at some candidates that have name appeal and star quality that we can get behind and put back in Congress. So our draft campaign, when we started it, it was a test to see if it had legs. It has legs. It's worked very well. It's now given David Clark high name recognition, and it's gotten him a lot of positive response. And we wanted to do that because we wanted to make sure that if we did it and we put it behind a black male, that it would come off that he's intelligent, that he's smart, that he knows what he's doing. What we're trying to do, and it's something that Walt Disney did with a mouse. He took a mouse and he made it the most loved character on earth. So one of the things that we want to do with our candidates is we want to take them and make them the most loved, most intelligent people on the planet. And that's what we're doing with David Clark. We're taking a black man and giving him a very positive feel, a positive look, and as opposed to what popular culture holds of black men, the stereotype that popular culture gives. So we recently ran a print ad in a Milwaukee paper, the Milwaukee Community Journal, which is the largest black paper in Milwaukee, and we said more Clark, less Snoop, because we don't want all of our young black men growing up even though Snoop makes a lot of money, being a character, a caricature, buffoon. That's not what we're looking for young black men to emulate. We want them to be more like a Sheriff Clark, more like you, Vlad. Very, very hardworking and prominent in your community and giving back. So we work hard to choose really good candidates that are strong, that have great personality, that can win, and that's where the backbone of the Sheriff Clark campaign comes from, is why we're asking Alan West, we're going to ask him again to please serve in Congress again. We're going to ask Jennifer Carroll to please serve in Congress, and we're going to take these folks and just let people know how good they are, that these are the folks that we need in America. They're not just good for black America. These folks are good for America.
Right.
And these are the type of people we need. We need people who are good for America.
Now, you've been doing a lot of work on reaching out to these candidates, on reaching out to address these potential vacancies in Congress and other elected offices. And you've had some of these really stunning successes in terms of getting things done. But as somebody who travels around the country extensively and somebody who sees a lot of these things from the ground level, at the grassroots level, you've actually encountered some things that, from what I can describe them, are kind of disheartening and kind of disappointing. I'd like to talk about the special election in Georgia to replace former Congressman Tom Price, who is now the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And there's a pretty big field of candidates running in that race. And you mentioned to me when we last spoke that there were some challenges that you were seeing that were not being addressed properly, and there were some opportunities that seemed to be slipping through Republicans' fingers in terms of moving forward on these on this race.
There is, but before that, I was at the spring meeting of the Republican National Committee in Palm Beach at the Four Seasons, I believe about a month and a half ago. And Ronna Romney, this is her first time there,
right?
And my first time there. And the speaker was Steve Wynn, who's a casino magnate from Vegas,
right?
Billionaire. Everybody in the room was a billionaire. Everybody in that room was worth minimum of $20 million. I'm the only black there. We don't have enough black millionaires coming forward.
Or we do, but they're all on the other side of the equation.
They're on the other side of the equation. So to attend this quarterly meeting costs $330,000 to get your seat. So I'm in the room, and Marco Rubio's the speaker. He's talking about diversity, and I'm the only group there that represents electing diverse people. And to say that my follow-up after a month and a half has been great, it has not been. The RNC is moving. They're putting people in place, but I don't know what diversity means. I really don't. I think diversity means you can be in a room, but you can't lead, or something like that. I don't know what diverse means. To me, it means everybody but the black man. So anybody. And that's where, and I'm skipping subject, that's where the anger from African Americans is toward this current sanctuary city movement. We're tired of being left out.
Right.
And let me move forward to your question is, one of the things that I'm most disappointed about with the Republican Party, and I'm working hard for them, is that they don't really reach out to African Americans until the last second. Now, in the congressional race in District 6, there's 11 Republicans running, 3 Democrats. The Democrats have raised a record $8 million for one candidate. $8 million for one candidate. The Republicans are actually, I had a call this morning asking for BlakPAC to get involved in the congressional race. It's too little too late. This is a race that Tom Price had. He had 70% of the vote for 10 years. And we're about to blow it. And the Democrats sense blood. And they're spending $8 million to snatch this seat. This is the first race after President Trump has won election. And we're not committed enough, and we haven't gone after the black vote to secure that seat. And you're going to need the black vote to save that seat, because if blacks don't come out, that seat's going to be a Democratic seat. If we do come out, a Republican will win. But the Republicans who are making decisions on these campaigns just don't get it yet. They really don't get it. They think that they can win this going to the same old voters over and over and over again. Now, since we've studied a lot of politicians, white voters already know who they're going to vote for, maybe almost a month in advance.
Yeah.
The only voters that are up for grabs are blacks and Latinos. And we don't have a message to those voters. And what we're going to do is we're going to come very close. I don't think we're going to lose this seat, but I think we're going to come very close to losing this seat and energizing a lot of Democrats. So I think we're going to win this seat maybe by 5 points. But it's going to be tough because, again, we're going to the black community as an afterthought and not as part of the initial strategy.
Why is that?
And that's where the Republican Party... because what you have is you have a lot of consultants that are with the Republican Party. They're very young. There's nothing wrong with that. But they confuse Facebook likes and Twitter likes with voters. Okay. So they tend to put on a campaign that's kind of entertaining.
Right.
That's more about getting Facebook hits and Twitter hits than about knocking on doors and getting voters, which is what BlakPAC does, the grassroots, the hard stuff, knocking on doors, putting out our own flyers, buying our own ads, putting out the message that we know will appeal to African Americans, Latinos, and Asians. And you just have you don't have a diversity in those ranks of campaign managers. It's usually a young kid who read a book about how Reagan won, and they're using old strategies.
Do you think part of that, though, comes from maybe the mistaken belief that because Trump was able to win on a campaign that's largely driven by social media, by word of mouth, and by expanding on those tools, people tend to seem to forget that without the Electoral College, we don't have President Trump. We have President Clinton. But the Electoral College is a national thing. It's not a state thing. And so you need those traditional tools, those block walkers, those phone bankers, those door knockers. You need those things on board at the local races, the grassroots level, in order to win those local races, because you don't have an Electoral College to bail you out. It seems like they don't seem to understand that the tools they used previously don't apply in this case because it's a totally different dynamic.
You're absolutely right, Vlad. They don't apply. And because you have millennials running campaigns, they don't get it because they've grown up with video games. They've grown up without social interaction. So, I mean, social interaction with them is calling Uber and getting a ride somewhere. So you've got a generation that hasn't learned to hold a conversation and look people in the eyes running campaigns, and at the first sign of trouble, they hide their candidate. You want to see a campaign that had a ton of money that failed? Look at Jeb Bush's campaign. He spent $70,000 per voter.
Right.
With millennials running his campaign, total failure. And Jeff actually did some great things for African Americans in Florida that he never emphasized. For example, he reopened the Florida A&M School of Law. A lot of people don't know that. It was closed for 50 years. Democrats never reopened it. The school was taken and put in place at Florida State and never reopened for Florida A&M. Jeb Bush did that his first term in office. He did a lot of great things. He's almost a founder of the charter school movement in Florida. So there's a lot of great things he could have done, but because he was running away from the black vote, and he blew his chance. He blew his chance in the Bush family. Yeah. But he could have done better. But for 70,000 to vote, he did really bad. To get the black vote, it's going to take a year-round effort, not just a last-minute effort. And the cost is going to be about $13,000 per voter in terms of radio interaction, signs, in terms of door knocking, in terms of canvassing. And some of the things that we do, we love to get these young kids involved, like I was at a young age, knocking on doors, and they end up working for campaigns.
Now, a lot of these things that you're describing, these efforts that you're describing, the Republican Party addressed a lot of these concerns in 2012 with the quote-unquote autopsy, and they said, we need to engage these communities more. And then it seems like in 2016 they threw that entire playbook out the window. And in a way, we kind of got lucky that President Trump was able to do so well with the black community in comparison to Mitt Romney and other candidates before him. but we can't count on that going forward. Like you're saying, we need to engage. So what do we need to do going forward? Obviously the efforts we do at the local grassroots, the local party level is going to be somewhat different from what the RNC does at the national level. Obviously those levels of engagement have to not only be complementary, but they also, by their very nature, they're going to be somewhat separate. So what do we have to do going forward in your eyes in terms of what you're seeing?
Well, if we want to elect Republicans, there's a training that we do called Correct the Disconnect, where we actually talk to in black communities, telling them that you're past Republican, you're conservative. Number one, you're pro-life. Number two, your school choice, because you believe your child should get a good education no matter where that child gets an education. And every 3-year-old knows how to work a smartphone. So we know black kids are smart because they know how to find games, download them, all these things at 3 or 4 years old. So it's not that we're being miseducated or uneducated when we get to school. So we know that black parents are pro-choice. We know they want safe neighborhoods. We know they're pro-life. We know that blacks and Hispanics, no matter what their economic situation is, will have a baby. Where white folks have to plan their babies out. They have to have a retirement plan before the baby's born, a 401k and college plan. So we know that these are pro-life communities. We know we know that they care about education. We know they care about safe neighborhoods, and we know they care about the Second Amendment. That black folks and Hispanics who are here legally want the right to legally carry a firearm. These are the three things that make a conservative. That's past Republican. So we have a training session that goes into why you're conservative, and if you're conservative, you need to match your faith with your politics. And that's what it comes down to. If these are the things that match your faith, match your politics, then you'll vote Republican every single time. We're working to share this information with the Republican Party and maybe do a joint project together where we both go together into these communities and we bring people that can deliver this message. Not a millennial that doesn't have the life experience, but someone a little bit older that has been through the life experience and understands what conservative values are. And that's one of the things we're hoping to do with the Republican Party.
Well, you certainly have your plate full. You have a lot of challenges that you're addressing right now. What should voters expect, or what should people expect to see out of BlakPAC coming next? What's the next big thing that's going to be going on for y'all?
The next big thing that's going to be going on for us is we're going to be polling to see where we think David Clark is going to end up. Right now, we're not in the lead because he's running against an incumbent, but that's okay. We can overcome that. The other big thing we have to do is we got to find some good candidates, white, black, Latin, Asians, to run for Congress. We can't sit still at 0.005% and expect to make a difference. Right now, we can't even make a difference. We don't even have the votes to make a difference in any legislation. And when you talk to the big donors, they're not interested because we just have to grow. We have to grow as BlakPAC. We have to grow our organization. So I invite your listeners to go to our website, blakpac.com, and join us and become a member. If you can make a donation, please, $1, $2, $3, whatever you can spare, help us grow. I mean, we need to become we need to have people pander to us like they do to AIPAC. I mean, that would be our goal, to have the politicians come to us, sit down, let's find out what we can do together. And in places like Georgia, we need the people to come and knock on doors. We're going to be there after the 18th because it's the primary election. We hope we get a Republican. I think we're going to get a Republican in the general election. It's going to be a straight Democrat against a Republican.
Right.
And we're going to be there on the 18th. We're going to be there knocking doors, waving signs, putting on our own door hangers, passing out the BlakPAC magazine, which issue we have a spring issue coming out. And we're going to be hitting the ground in Atlanta to make sure that we keep Tom Price's seat on the Republican side, and that we have a supporter for the president. So those are the big things coming up for 2000. We got to get ready for 2018 off your elections.
Absolutely. That's huge. That's going to be a game changer because that's going to define the next, 10 years or so.
Yeah.
We've been speaking with...
And the Republicans are energized. And part of that is because we didn't get the health care bill through the first time. So Republicans have to stop fighting Republicans for the next 2 years. That's another big thing we have to stop.
That's a huge challenge to overcome. That's your next project.
Yes.
We've been speaking with George T. Farrell he's the chairman of BlakPAC, an organization that has been working effectively to engage with minority communities and get black and minority candidates elected to office. You can find their website at blakpac.com. It's spelled BLAK, pac.com. And you can follow them on Twitter at RealBlakPAC. George, thank you again for joining us here in the American Chronicles. Keep us posted on everything you're doing and check in with us as soon as you can to let us know how things are progressing.
I'll let you know about Congressional Race 16. And one of the things I forgot to mention, Byron Donalds, who's one of the black candidates we helped in Florida win a state house seat down in Sarasota, Naples. So we have been a part of a lot of winning campaigns. So I appreciate your time, Vlad.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Come on in again anytime. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Check out my website, vladdavidyak.com, and make sure you follow me on Twitter, at VladDavidyak, if you want your life to be complete. Please give the show a great rating and review on iTunes. It really helps other people find us when they're searching for a show that they might love. As always, until the next time, remember, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.